And so I problematized that in my research. But the twin side is that you cannot describe any church without looking at music. There is no church that I know that doesn't use music. And yet the bulk of the music that is sung in churches, in every meeting, is largely doxological. So you focus on worship, you also have evangelism, you also have, just sheer edification of a feel-good and hope and all of that. But very little music in the church on social justice. And my question is, how can that be possible? If you sang a social justice song, you will be deemed political. If you run for political office, you are described as secular, as evil, as engaging in something dirty. And so if I stood to defend the Constitution, I would be seen in that light, even as a Christian social justice advocate. I will close by telling you that if you went to my YouTube channel, that's Ruben Kigame Official, you will find an interesting paradox. The biggest song on that channel has 23 million views. It's called Huniachi. I wish you could clap for what I'm going to say next, but I don't think you will. If you picked another song, like Cry the Pain, which commemorates the bombing of the US embassies in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam in 1998, or you picked a song like Who Will Help the Refugees, the views are in very tiny figures. And so with Home for Christmas and Why Kill Tonight, which is very videographic, by the way. Very, very pictorial. Actually, there is even a PG warning on it. But those songs on social justice on my channel don't attract as much attention, even from the church. And so I guess I'll be in this research space for a while, because I'm still looking for answers. But this morning, I'm delighted to celebrate one of the people that inspired me to be in this path of inclusive democracy. Gitobu Imanyara and his publications really won my heart from early. I'm a product of Weekly Review, certainly the work of Bidan Bugwa with Beyond, and what the clergy was doing, Gitari, Njoya, Okulu, and these guys to engage the state with Christian truth and speak truth to power. You can't separate me from those. And so when the current president went the direction of YK92, I went the exact opposite. And that marks the difference between my ideology and philosophy and his. I'm a product of multi-party democracy. I would leave Maryhill High School, where I was teaching those days, and attend the multi-party rallies that were Kamkunji and so on. And I remember listening to Katiba, listening to Rubia, listening to Shikuku, and certainly my good friend, who's become more of my friend in the recent years, he was with me when I was being denied my rights to run in 2022. And I remember him storming Chebukati's office to ask why I was being treated the way I was. And so I've come to listen to him as a friend, but also because he's officially my attorney. Because on 31st July, I filed a case imploring the courts to give me a chance to prosecute those that have killed our children in the recent issues that have happened in our country. I do believe that The Bible demands justice. Amos would remind us, let justice roll down like water and righteousness like a never-ending stream. It is in that spirit that I celebrate the 15th anniversary of our Constitution, because I do believe that we have a good Constitution that can serve us and posterity, and that can give us the kind of country that we are looking for. And with those many remarks, allow me to end here and request that I pray as the Dean asked me to. Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for life itself, and we thank you for sound minds. We thank you for the opportunity to sit and reminisce on our gains and losses in the last 15 years with regard to our Constitution. And we thank you for an environment where we can reflect and hear from people that have been faithful to the cause of having a better country. And I ask that our brother Gitobu will inspire all of us, and especially the young people of this country, to take up the mantle and defend constitutionalism and justice. And I pray that you would help us as Christians in this country to shun hypocrisy and contradictory living, and offer the world not just the prophetic voice, but also a very clear direction on governance. And so we ask that you would add your blessing to these 3 days and the presentation this morning in particular, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Miss Adeline, and thank you, Dr. Kigame. Congratulations on your PhD. We are always so grateful to get more members of the intellectual community joining us, and hopefully we will have you back here for more engagement in that direction. So now we start with opening remarks from our Dean, Professor John Osogo Ambani, who is an associate professor and dean of the Kabarak University Law School. He possesses a formidable academic background with an LLD and LLM from the University of Pretoria, as well as an LLB from the University of Nairobi. He specializes in public law, focusing on constitutional law, devolution, human rights, and governance. With numerous publications to his name, Professor Ambani is recognized for his contributions to legal scholarship and advocacy in Kenya, playing a vital role in shaping legal education and promoting social justice through his academic and administrative leadership. Welcome, Professor John Osogo Ambani.
Thank you, Sam. Sam is my colleague. And this time the AI was 100%. Right. Yeah. Mko vipi leo? Mko sawa? Mumenyamaza? Yeah, tunataka conference ya kuchangamka ya Wakenya wa kawaida wajisikie nyumbani, sivyo? Nilikuwa nimemuomba, maybe I can say, asked Dr. Stephanie that I can speak in Kiswahili a bit, then I will translate to her later over tea what I would have said, because this is an ordinary person's day, and we need to use the most obvious language, at least for my remarks, mine only perhaps. Naomba kwanza ni wataje washirika muhimu ambao wako hapa. Wa kwanza ni mgeni wetu wa heshima, Hon Gitobu Imanyara, mheshimiwa. tukiwa kwenye ofisi nilikuwa nimetaja kama Kigame kwamba Imanyara ni mojawapo wa watu ambao walikuwa wanatupatia motisha ya kusoma, tukawa na sheria, tuweze pia kupigania haki. Nikiwa mdogo nakumbuka pale Kisumu, nikienda primary school, ilikuwa inaitwa Joel Omino. Nimeiona hata wiki hii bado iko. Mara nyingi tumefurushwa kutoka shule na tear gas, askari. Na kila wakati nilikuwa nauliza, mbona askari wanakuja kwenye shule? Nilikuwa naambiwa kwamba Wakenya wanapigania vyama vingi, wanataka vyama vingi vya kisiasa, wanataka demokrasia. Nikaanza kusoma magazeti, nikapata kila wakati Imanyara iko pale. Marafiki zake wengine, Kivuta Kibwana, Kiraitu Murungi wako pale. Willy Mtunga, huyu mwenzetu hapa, alikuwa mmoja wapo. Nikaanza kusema pia mimi nitataka kuwa kama vile. Ndiposa nikachukua uamuzi wa kusomea sheria. Ungeniuliza mimi vizuri, ningetaka kuwa mwana filosofia kama Kigame ama mwana literature, mambo kama hayo. Lakini Gitobu ni mmoja wapo ambao walituhimiza bila hata kukutana na wao, ambao walitushauri, ambao walitufanyia kile mambo wanaita mentorship ya kutaka kwanza mambo ya sheria. Nashukuru sana umekuja hapa kusimama na sisi. Nataka pia nimtambue Dr. Stephanie Ruthenberg ambaye ndiyo director wa Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. Naambiwa kwa Kijerumani Stiftung inamaanisha foundation, sivyo? Yeah. Na yeye ni rafiki yetu mkubwa sana. Na tumefanya kazi na yeye, hii ikiwa ni ya pili ya tatu tukifanya na wao, na ametusaidia sana, especially upande wa kusupport hii conference. Mnavyoona inagharimu mambo mengi sana kuwa na conference kama hii, na KASU wamesimama nasi, na pia tunafanya nao kazi ya rule of law, kusimamia mambo ya sheria kuwa ndio inaongoza nchi. Nadhani tutazidi kufanya kazi pamoja siku zijazo. Nimefurahia sana kuona ndugu yangu Kigame alivyotaja hakualikwa, alijialika. Na nikasema ni Mungu amemuita hapa. Manake ni rafiki yangu mkubwa pia. Tumefanya kazi na yeye. Kigame ni mwimbaji wa kimataifa ambaye ana kibali kikubwa, na mara nyingi tumetembea naye tukaimba naye, akanifundisha sauti moja mbili. Nadhani sijamwangusha sana. Siku moja pia mimi nitainuka. Tumefanya naye siasa pia. Wale ambao hawafahamu, kabla ya kusimama rais, alisimama pia kama governor wa Vihiga County. Tumefanya campaign na yeye kule kwenye ground. Na vile anavyotaja, Wakenya bado hawajaanza kusikia mambo ya social justice. Bado nafurahi kwamba haja give up, bado anapigana, bado anasimama urais alivyotaja. Natumai kwamba mwaka ujao ama ule mwingine tutazidi kumsikia akiwania vile viti vikubwa, hasa hicho cha rais. Bwana Kigame, shikilia papo hapo na ukapiganie watu wako. Nimefurahi Mungu ametukutanisha hapa hivi leo bila kupanga. Naomba pia niwataje ndugu zetu na dada, tuseme kaka na dada ambao wamekuja hapa kutoka kwenye communities zetu za hapa. Kama Kabarak Law School tumeamua kwamba tutakuwa tunafanya kazi na communities zetu za hapa Baringo, za hapa Nakuru na Rift Valley, kisha hata Kenya wakati mwingine. But hao ambao wako karibu na sisi, mbona tusifanye kazi pamoja? Nafurahi kwamba mmetutembelea. Karibuni sana. Wana community, karibuni sana. Naomba mkae na sisi leo, kesho kutwa, sivyo? Na muwe huru kuongea Kiswahili pia, Kiingereza, hata Kikalenjin. Tuko Kabarak ni Kalenjin, tutaongea zote hapa. Tukaweza kuongea mambo yetu ya Kenya, hata Kikuyu kama uko hapa na unaongea Kikuyu, Kalenjin, whatever, Kijaluo, Kikisi, tafadhali ongeeni lugha yenu tuweze kujadili mambo ya katiba. Naomba mwisho kutaja wanafunzi, na wanafunzi hapa wako kwa viwango viwili. Kuna wanafunzi ambao wametoka shule jirani, kuna shule kadhaa jirani hapa ambazo zimetutembelea pia. Egerton, kuna wale wamefika kutoka Egerton. Niwataje? Wako wapi kwenye Egerton? Karibuni sana. Siwapigie makofi wana Kabarak. Karibuni sana, mjisikie nyumbani. Egerton huwa ni marafiki wetu wakubwa. na muite wengine pia, hata kama kesho ama kesho kutwa tukajadili pamoja mambo ya katiba hapa Kabarak. Katiba sio Kabarak, ni ya nchi nzima, inasaidia kila mtu. Mwisho nitaje wana Kabarak, wanafunzi na wenzangu walimu, lakini walimu hamna haja ya kutaja sana manake wanafanya kazi tofauti tofauti hapa, mtaona. Sam Ngure yuko hapa, Melissa Mungai yuko hapa, Cedric nimemuona hapa ambaye pia ni mwenyekiti wa department. But utaona wakikimbia wakijaribu mambo yaingie laini. But wale nataka kutaja sana hapa ni wana Kabarak, wanafunzi wa Kabarak. Mheshimiwa Gitobu, hiyo sauti inaweza katole? Okay. Imetoka? Okay, nadhani imetoka. Mheshimiwa Gitobu, wakati naongea kuhusu wanafunzi wa Kabarak, huwa mara nyingi naongea kuhusu mashujaa. Wanafunzi wa Kabarak ni wale ambao wana vipaji na vimeonekana dunia mzima. So tunapoongelesha sio watu wa kawaida, hata sisi tunaogopa kama walimu, manake miongoni mwao ni wale ambao wameshinda moot courts dunia mzima kama huyu Adeline. ni wale ambao wanatambulika dunia mzima. Miongoni wao ni wale ambao wameandika vitabu. Hapa Kabarak wanafunzi wameandika vitabu kutuliko sisi walimu. So tunaongelea kuhusu waandishi wa kimataifa. Kwa international law tunaoita highly qualified publicists wako hapa miongoni wetu. Vile vile tunao viongozi wa KULSA wako hapa, mtaona. I think wanafanya kazi hapa na pale. Viongozi wa KUSO wako hapa. Hayo ni mashirika ambayo yanasimamia wanafunzi. Kuna hapa inaitwa nini, debate, wanafanya mjadala kimataifa na wanafanya vizuri sana. Kuna hapa pia wale ambao washaanza kuwa mawakili, wanachukua kesi za community, wanafanya na wao, wanapeleka kotini pamoja na walimu wanasimamia, na wamefanya vizuri katika mambo kama hayo. Hata kile inaitwa legal aid clinic or awareness wanafanya hapa. So wanafunzi wa Kabarak ni watu wa kiwango hicho. So nawatambua mwisho, sio kwa sababu ni wale wa chini, bali kwa sababu wale ni wale wa nyumbani, na naweza sema ndio wa mwisho kutambulika. Karibuni sana wanafunzi wa Kabarak, nadhani wengi wamekaa hapa, naweza waona. Utakapokuja wakati mwingine tutachanganyika, ndio kila mtu aingie sehemu tofauti na tuweze kuongea pamoja. Nikishatambua watu hivyo, naomba kusema mawili matatu, kisha nitarudisha microphone kwa Sam, naona muda umeyoyoma. Ya kwanza ni kusema kwamba Kabarak Law School inasimamia mambo matatu na yameandikwa hapa. Mambo ya matatu muhimu ukiangalia kwenye mission yetu. Ya kwanza ni utafiti. Tunafanya utafiti kwa mambo ya sheria na pia mambo yanayohusika na sheria, mambo ambayo yamelingana na lazima iwe sheria tu. Kigame yuko mahali pazuri hapa, manake hatufanyi sheria, tunafanya interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary studies. Tukishafanya utafiti, hatukai nao, hatuendi tukajificha na utafiti ambao tumefanya. Tunafundisha wengine pia waweze kujua ni kipi ambacho tumepata katika utafiti wetu. Tunafundisha through classes. Kuna wanafunzi ambao wako hapa wanatafuta degree au tunawafundisha, but pia tunafundisha kupitia forum kama hizi, kama vitabu ambavyo tunaandika, tunaweza kushare na watu, kuambia haya ndio tumepata katika utafiti wetu. Mwishowe tunafanya kile kinaitwa community service. Tunajaribu kwamba kazi yetu lazima ilingane na community ambazo tuko ndani, jamii ambazo ziko hapa Kenya, Baringo, Afrika, lazima pia ziweze kupata faida kutokana na utafiti ambao tumefanya. Hayo ndio mambo matatu ambayo tunafanya hapa Kabarak, na yote tunaifanya kutoka kwa kile tunaita biblical perspective. Tunatumia yale mafundisho ya Kikristo kufanya haya mambo yote. Hayo ndio yanayotupea mwelekezo tunapofanya mambo haya. Hiyo ndio description ya Kabarak. Nikishafika hapo, naomba kwamba niseme moja sasa kuhusu hii conference, ndio wote tuweze kuwa nyumbani, tuelewe nini tunachokifanya, na kisha tuweze kujadili kama watu ambao tunaelewana, watu ambao wameelewa tunatoka wapi na tunaenda wapi. Conference hii kidogo tulianza ili kusherekea miaka 15 ya katiba. Wale ambao wanakumbuka ilikuwa tarehe 27 karibu niimbe wimbo wa rumba ile ya Stella. Ilikuwa tarehe 27, sivyo? Wa 8, sivyo? Ndio ilikuwa tarehe ya katiba kupitishwa. Hii ndio siku tulipitisha katiba 2010. Miaka sasa imepita 15. Kama ulizaa mtoto wakati huo kama mimi, yule mtoto anafanya grade 9. Sivyo? Mwaka huu anafanya mtihani wa grade 9. Katiba yetu imefika wakati huo. Ni teenage. Real teenage, 15 years. Tunajiuliza maswali magumu sana wakati huu. Je, hii katiba ni ile ambayo tulioitaka kutokea mwanzo? Kuna mambo ambayo Wakenya walitaka, kuna mambo ambayo kina Gitobu Imanyara walitaka. Hii ndio ile katiba ambayo tulitaka. Na ikiwa ndio hiyo, ama hata kama iko na upungufu, tumefika wapi sasa hivi kuitekeleza? Tumeitekeleza tulivyotarajia? Okay? Ni nini ambacho kimepungua? Nini ambacho tumefanya vema? Nini ambacho kimeenda kando kando? Ni nini ambacho tunafaa tupeleke mbele? Nini ambacho tunafaa tubadilishe? Hayo ndio mambo ambayo tunaomba kujadili katika conference hii. Na kutanguliza, tulianza na kufanya utafiti sisi wenyewe. Walimu wa hapa Kabarak na wanafunzi tulikaa chini, tukaanza kufanya utafiti kutokea mwanzoni wa mwaka huu, Februari kule. Tulianza kufanya utafiti na kidogo tumesha kusanya utafiti kwa chapter zote, articles zote za Bill of Rights. Kwa wale ambao wamewahi ona katiba, na tunaweza tukashare wakati mwingine mkitaka. Katiba iko na articles karibu 44 zinazohusu human rights. Inaanza kama 19, article 19 pale hapo inaisha 59. Zote ukihesabu ni kama 44. Tumefanya utafiti kwa kila article ya constitution. Na tunajaribu kujiuliza hayo maswali ambayo nimetaja hapo awali. So tutakachokifanya hapa ni kujadili na pamoja nanyi, tujiulize haya ni mambo ambayo tunaona. Haya ni mambo ambayo tumeshuhudia sisi wenyewe. Tunaposema for example mtu ana the right to life. Umeona ni kama maisha yetu yamekuwa protected na hii katiba. Umeona ni kwamba serikali imefanya mambo ya kutupeleka ya kuensure right to life imeendelea kuongezeka ama imeendelea kupromoka. Hayo ndio mambo ambayo ningependa kujadili kwa siku ambazo zitakuwa hapa, siku 2-3 ambazo zitakuwa hapa. Na kisha msiogope kutupatia critic. Tutakuwa na panelist hapa ambao wamehusika kwa huu utafiti, na hao hatuwezi sema ni Mungu, hatuwezi sema wanajua kila kitu. Kuna mambo ambayo hawawezi jua, kuna mambo ambayo unaweza wasaidia kujua, unaweza wasahihisha, unaweza ongeza, unaweza toa, kisha tukajumlisha hayo yote tukamaliza kitabu chetu. Na hicho kitabu pia tutarudisha kwenu, tutaweka kwenye mtandao, tutachapisha copies kidogo, na wale ambao wataweza kuja huku ama tukuja kwenye mashinani tutaweza pia kuwapatia mkaone hivyo vitabu. Hiyo ndio conference ambayo itakuwa hapa wiki hili. Nikishasema hivyo nadhani wote tuko nyumbani, sasa tunaelewa ambacho tunafanya, na tutajisikia nyumbani kuweza kujadili pamoja na kujenga katiba yetu na kujenga nchi yetu. Manake wale ambao wako uongozini hawataijenga, na hata hawatajenga peke yao, lazima tujenge wote pamoja. So tujisikie kama citizen. Citizen inamaanisha sisi ndio wenye nchi. Sio tu wananchi, wenye nchi. Lazima tuje pamoja, tuongee pamoja siku zinazokuja 3 na tujadili, tumalize mjadala huu na tuweze kupeana recommendations ambazo zitapeana mwelekeo ambao Kenya itafuata siku zijazo. Kwangu ni hayo tu. Kisha nikaseme karibuni sana Kabarak. Kama dean na wakaribisha Kabarak Law School, mjisikie nyumbani. Tutaongea, tutakula, tutakunywa chai, sivyo? Tutakula ugali, kanyama tutaweka pale, kisha tutakuwa marafiki na tuendelee kufanya kazi siku zijazo. Na Mungu awabariki sana. Tukutane tena tunapotembea hapa na hapa. Asanteni sana. Bwana Sam, nimemaliza. Bwana Sam, nimemaliza maongezi yangu. Ama mtaka nimuite mgeni wetu? Nimwalike mgeni wetu. Unakuja? Okay. Anasema anakuja. Acha nitamngoja. Kuna yote ambayo ana swali anapokuja basi. Wanafunzi wangu wanajua kile tunachofanya. Wageni, kuna chochote ambacho mngependa kujua? Okay. Sama, wana swali, karibu. Thank you.
Asanti sana Profesa John Osogwambani, amidi wa kitivo cha sheria katika chuo kikuu cha Kabarak. That is the Dean of the Law School of Kabarak University. Kama wahenga walivyosema, ninaunga mkono kwa kuwakaribisha wale ambao wametoka katika mkoa huu, na kama wahenga walivyosema, wahenga walisema ya kwamba fimbo ya mbali haiui nyoka. Kwa hivyo tunafurahi kuungana nanyi katika kikao hiki. Thank you so much, Dean. That was my best attempt. I think I did well. So next we want to have opening remarks from Dr. Stephanie Rothenberger, who is the program director of the Rule of Law program for Sub-Saharan countries of the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. She studied law at the universities of Munich, Lausanne, and Heidelberg, and absolved her legal training to attain the qualification to work as a judge of the High Court of Hamburg. She has done a PhD in international environmental law at the distinguished Max Planck Institute for Comparative Public Law and International Law in Heidelberg, as well as the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, Canada. Before appointment at CAS, Dr. Rothenberger was serving as the ministerial counselor for the German parliament in Berlin. During her assignment at the German parliament, she was mainly responsible for the official international relations of the president of the German parliament and his deputies, with a focus on the Arab world and Africa, which brought her to sub-Saharan Africa on several official missions. Furthermore, she spent 7 months in the Sultanate of Oman to study Arabic. Dr. Rothenberger has also worked with the German Federal Council, the Bundesrat, the representation of German states, Länder, at federal level, as a consultant for international parliamentary affairs in Berlin. She's also served as the representative for the German Federal Council at the European Parliament in Brussels. Previously, she worked for Development Law Service for the Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO, of the United Nations in Rome. She speaks English, French, Arabic, and Italian, and German? Yes. Okay. Okay. Please welcome Dr. Stephanie Rothenberger.
Thank you for that very detailed introduction. Honorable Dr. Gitobu Imanyara, Dr. Reuben Kigame, dear Professor John Ambani, Dean of Kabarak University School of Law, dear professors and representatives of academia, representatives of civil society and local communities, dear students, distinguished guests, advocates of justice, a warm welcome to all of you. It is a great pleasure and honor for Konrad Adenauer Foundation's Rule of Law program for Sub-Saharan Africa to be a supporting partner of this important conference commemorating the 15th anniversary of the Constitution of Kenya 2010, reflecting on constitutional transformation with a special focus on the Bill of Rights. This conference is linked to a remarkable initiative by Kabarak University, the publication of a comprehensive article-by-article commentary on the Bill of Rights that also systematically documents the history and evolution of each constitutional right. I would like to thank Kabarak University School of Law for taking the bold step of initiating this unique project, as well as for hosting this conference. We at KAS, which is the short for Konrad Adenauer Foundation, are proud to work with Kabarak University, which has established itself at the forefront of excellent academic scholarship in Kenya and on the continent. This very conference is testimony to that. The Constitution of Kenya 2010 is one of the most progressive constitutions in Africa and across the globe. From its preamble, it recognizes the aspirations of all Kenyans for a government founded on essential values: human rights, equality, freedom, democracy, social justice, and the rule of law. At the very heart of your constitution lies the Bill of Rights, enshrined in Chapter 4 and spanning 40 articles, an extraordinary commitment to human dignity and liberty. However, it is one thing to enshrine rights in a constitution and quite another to fully realize them. Strong institutions, sound law, and political will are indispensable. But just as crucial is the active engagement of citizens, alert, committed, and determined to uphold their rights. When I first arrived in Kenya in 2020, the nation had just celebrated the 10th birthday of its constitution. In the same year, the Building Bridges initiative was being discussed in every corner of the country, and every citizen had an opinion about it. And in fact, I could discuss about BBI with every taxi driver or with every woman or man in a shop whom I met, and I found that quite impressive. And I learned very quickly how proud Kenyans are of their constitution, and you have all reason to be, and how political and alert you are, when it comes to your basic rights and the very foundations of your state. I could see that even better when 4 years later, young Kenyan citizens took to the streets in impressive numbers to demonstrate against a major piece of legislation by the government. In fact, the whole world could see it. And from early on in my days here, I also learned how lively, committed, and outspoken civil society as such is in this country up to the recent day. And also this is something you can be truly proud of. Konrad Adenauer, whose name our political foundation bears, once said that there is no democracy without democrats. And he knew what he was talking about, as he had survived the cruel dictatorship of National Socialism in Germany as a political opponent to later, in 1949, become the first prime minister of the newly founded Federal Republic of Germany after the horrors of World War II. But not only that, Konrad Adenauer was also one of the so-called fathers of the Constitution of Germany, which we call our basic law, and which was formulated by a parliamentary council of which Konrad Adenauer was the president. So our constitution is not a product of a unique process of public participation like your constitution, but it has from its beginnings been held in high regard by German citizens. A constitution that is a success story, as our former federal chancellor Angela Merkel once put it, and a constitution that, like yours, puts its human rights bill in the center. It's with altogether 19 articles, not by far as long as your human rights bill, but we make up for it by putting it as the first chapter of our constitution. And so Article number 1 of our basic law reads, human dignity shall be inviolable. To respect and protect it shall be the duty of all state authority. But again, no constitution, no matter how well crafted, can implement itself. That is as true for Germany as it is for Kenya, and indeed for any democracy. Vigilance, dialogue, and critical reflection are essential. Citizens, scholars, and institutions alike must keep asking the right questions, defending fundamental values, and breathing life into the rights enshrined in their constitutions. At Konrad Adenauer Foundation's Rule of Law program, we are convinced that the promotion of human rights and the protection of the rule of law do not rest solely in courtrooms and legislative halls. They begin in forums such as this one, where critical minds come together to debate, to challenge, to inspire, and to reaffirm a collective commitment to democracy, justice, and the defense of human rights. No democracy without Democrats. People like you, like us, gathered here in this room. People like us who have come together today for this very timely and important conference. Timely and important as we live in an era that is marked by constant and severe challenges with regard to democracy, human rights, and the rule of law, not only here in Africa. This is a worldwide phenomenon. And since I have arrived in Africa, I have to stress that I have met so many brave citizens and courageous communities who never give up, who never get tired of standing up for their rights. And that is truly impressive. And I'm also very happy that we have so many community representatives here today. I'm deeply grateful to Kabarak University for hosting us here in Nakuru as we celebrate the anniversary of the Constitution of Kenya. Thank you for your hospitality and your continued friendship and partnership. A beautiful example of our latest cooperation can be found outside the conference room in the course of the next days. A book on judicial financial independence in Africa, which is another prerequisite for the effective implementation of constitutions. And I'm also grateful to Kabarak University that you will allow us, Prof. Ambani, to show our documentary film, Journey to Justice, here in this conference on Wednesday, as we focus on our work on raising citizens' awareness, raising communities' awareness for their rights. We have a documentary film based on two major environmental law cases. This film is meant to be an encouragement and an inspiration for communities in Kenya and in the whole region to stand up for their rights and have their rights defended. I would also like to extend my deepest gratitude also on behalf of our supporting co-partners, namely ICJ and CREO, to our esteemed delegates, panelists, moderators, and guests for your presence. Your contributions, insights, and commitment will make this conference not only an academic milestone, but also a civic engagement of lasting significance. I look forward to lively and inspiring deliberations and discussions in the following days, as well as to the findings this gathering that will be captured in the Katiba at 15 human rights publication. I'm convinced that we will see fruits of the seeds that we are planting here today and during this week in the years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rothenberger, for that inspiring opening remark. And it is my distinguished pleasure to welcome Honorable Gitobu Imanyara, who is our keynote speaker for today. Mr. Gitobu Imanyara. Is it doctor or Mr.? Be patient. You're a patient. Okay. Which means he's on the journey. He is currently serving as the publisher and editor-in-chief of the Platform for Law, Justice and Society since 2014, and is a distinguished human rights and pro-democracy activist with over 45 years experience of legal service to this country. His educational journey includes a master's degree from Strathmore University, achieved in 2021. I believe he's currently a patient of a doctorate degree somewhere. He achieved his LLB in law from the University of Nairobi in 1977. Got a postgraduate diploma in law in 1979 and was thereafter admitted to the role of advocates. He is an alumnus of the Nairobi School, where he was from 1968 to 73 and served as the head of Scott House and was a school prefect. In addition, and most notably, he founded some of this country's most consequential legal publications, the Nairobi Law Monthly and the Nairobi Weekly, in the 1980s and 90s. And it is his work in legal publishing that led to political persecution between the 80s and the 90s. He was severally arrested, more times than we can count. He was held in maximum security prison, held in communicado, in psychiatric wards, and quite laudably, he would come out of prison, for example, in 1990, comes out of prison and immediately publishes a special issue entitled The Historic Debate, Law, Democracy, and Multi-Party Politics in Kenya, which then leads to his immediate rearrest by the authoritative regime of that country, which has a special relationship with this university. So it's interesting having him here as our keynote speaker. In addition, he has been a member of parliament, and he was a member of parliament for Central Imenti in the very consequential parliament that led to the journey of constitutional reforms in Kenya from 1997 to 2003. For those of you who will see our publication, that's when the Interparliamentary Group on Constitutional Reforms, on minimum constitutional reforms, began this journey that led to the 2010 Constitution. And he also served as an MP for Central Imenti again from 2008 to 2013, when he concurrently also served as a member of the Pan-African Parliament. He also runs a distinguished legal practice, Gitobu Imanyara and Company, which he established in 1978. I believe there is no better person to open this conference, so please welcome me. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Gitobu Imanyara, our keynote speaker.
Thank you, Sam, for that summary of my short life. Such a privilege to stand before you. But before I say anything else, let me tell you my relationship with your dean. We shared a relationship of teacher and student at Strathmore Law School, where he taught me my LLM course on international criminal justice and my thesis on accountability of leaders who claim immunity for human rights violations while serving office. It was one of my most enjoyable days as a pioneer student of Master of Laws class at Strathmore Law School. So when Dean Ambani requested me to come and speak as my teacher, what could I do? To accept, of course, because as a student, I feared I'd be punished if I turned down the request. And so I am very happy to be here. He asked me to speak for 45 minutes and answer questions for 15 minutes. I don't promise that I last for the 5 minutes, but if I don't, then just add the remaining minutes to your questions so that I can comply with your dean's request. Your program, of course, mentions that I'm the publisher of the Platform magazine, otherwise known as the Platform for Law, Justice and Society, which is very ably represented here by my editor-in-chief, the Evans Ogada, who is here, and who, if I fail to answer any questions, I'm glad he will answer them for me as a teacher of law at the University of Nairobi, where I graduated and where I started my LLM course, but I didn't finish because Dr. Louis Franceschi persuaded me to move from University of Nairobi to the pioneer class at Strathmore Law School. And I'm glad also that I've met Adeline, because I think the last time I had any communication with this university is when she asked me whether I could participate in a webinar discussion, you remember? And that was my first association with students of Kabarak. And I'd forgotten her name until the dean mentioned her to come forward to speak and give a devotion. Therefore, I recall those moments with special memories, because I guess it must have played a role in getting me invited to be here again today. Dr. Kigame, as he told you, is my client. And Sam, you're wrong. He never participated in the last elections. He was prevented from running for office. So his name didn't appear in the ballot paper unfairly. And we went to court. The court did admit, in fact, Chebukati admitted that what they did was wrong, but he didn't think that allowing Dr. Kigame to be on the ballot folks would have altered the results. That is what kind of leadership of the IBC we had those days. And I'll be saying something about the IBC in this speech as I go on. So, Dean, faculty, and students of Kabarak University Law School, distinguished guests, community delegates, my dear friends, I begin my lecture. I remember a small room with steel door, a plate slid in, metal against concrete, then quiet. In that quiet, I learned what the law is when power has no guardrails. It is breath. It is whether a citizen can write to a newspaper, stand in a crowd, or argue a case without fearing a knock at night. Many Kenyans carried that memory through detention, exile, and grief, until in 2010, we turned it into law. We did not receive a favor. We wrote the terms on which power would be held. And it's important, I think, for me that I just read that again as I proceed. I remember a small room with a steel door, a plate slid in, metal against concrete, then quiet. In that quiet, I learned what the law is when power has no guardrails. It is breath. It is whether a citizen can write to a newspaper, stand in a crowd, or argue a case without fearing a knock at night. Many Kenyans carried that memory through detention, exile, and grief, until in 2010, we turned it into law. We did not receive a favor. We wrote the terms on which power would be held. That is central to our new constitution. And so, ladies and gentlemen, my claim is simple. The 2010 Constitution is a people's covenant. If we treat it as a technical text and ignore its values, we will keep the letter and lose the country. Our work 15 years on is to make the spirit audible in government offices, courtrooms, newsrooms, and neighborhoods. I speak as someone who has paid a price for speech, and someone who has seen this country choose to keep faith with itself. So my lecture is in about 7 parts. And the first part is the anchor, the promise, and why it still matters. Article 1 says all sovereign power belongs to the people. Government only holds it in trust. Article 10 sets the conditions of that trust: human dignity, participation, transparency, accountability. Those words are not decoration. They are the brakes and the steering. They are how we prevent the return of the room with the steel door. Courts have said this clearly, and I've cited a few cases. In Orange Democratic Movement Party and 4 others, versus the Speaker of the National Assembly and 5 others, the High Court nullified the Privatization Act 2023 because there was no reasonable, meaningful, and effective public participation, and Parliament's oversight had been sidestepped. In plain English, there is no shortcut around the citizen. If public assets or the public purse are in play, the public must be in the room, and Parliament must do its work. That holding put a lock on the back door of the Treasury. The same ethic protects our institutions from being bypassed. When the executive tried to reform policing by creating a parallel task force, the court stopped it in Magare Gakenyi against Attorney General and others. The policing task force usurped the mandate of the National Police Service Commission. The principle is basic. If the Constitution or statute creates a body for a task, reform must pass through it, and through that body and not around it. This is not pedantry. It is how uniforms remain answerable to the law rather than to committees in the office of the president. Institutional fidelity also guards the public accounts. A flashy title cannot trespass onto the lane of the Auditor General. In Magare Gakenyi and Eliud Matinde against the Attorney General and others, the High Court suspended the Public Debt Audit Task Force with conservatory orders because it encroached on Article 229. Checks and balances are not ornamental. They are working parts of the engine. These holdings are not victories for litigants alone. They are practical lessons on how a republic behaves. The people lend power. Institutions hold it carefully. Participation is not a courtesy, it is a condition. Procurement is not paperwork. It is constitutional law doing its day job. Devolution is not a nuisance. It is a people's choice to live nearer to power. When a country forgets that grammar, daily life pays the cost. A parent at the school gate, a patient at a dispensary, a small publisher who lives or dies by advertising, a trader who needs a license and meets a national directive that the county cannot lawfully implement. The Constitution is therefore not a museum piece. It is a tool. It should leave fingerprints. My second part I deal with where practice keeps slipping and the cases teach. If the anchor is firm, practice drifts. Four habits keep pulling us off course. The bench has had to steer us back, and citizens have joined that work on the streets and in the courts. The first habit, shortcuts that cut out the public. We have seen complex social policy rolled out by press conferences, then hurried through the back door. When a new university funding model was unveiled without constitutionally required processes, the High Court struck it down for procedural and substantive defects. The Court of Appeal later stayed that judgment, but the warning stands. Social rights policy cannot be drawn in darkness. Students, parents, lecturers, and taxpayers are rights holders, not bystanders. Health reform told the same story and yielded the same lesson. In Enoch Aura against the Cabinet Secretary for Health, a three-bench invalidated the Social Health Insurance Act, the Primary Health Care Act, and the Digital Health Care Act for lack of meaningful public participation. The court did not block reform. It told the state to reform lawfully with citizens in the room. Rights are not a slogan. They are a method. A similar commitment to method appears in our digital shifts. Consider parents told to pay school fees only through e-citizen and to absorb a 50 shilling fee with no legal footing. In Magari, Kenyan Cabinet Secretary, National Treasury, High Court called the directive unconstitutional and irrational. Go digital, yes, but ride on legal rails. Innovation that tramples rights is not progress. It is power without consent. The second habit, parallel structures that hollow out institutions. Where a lawful body exists, the temptation to create a task force to do its work. Courts have drawn a firm line. Law Society of Kenya against the Attorney General annulled the Kamarogo Health Human Resources Task Force for duplicating a statutory institution. Reform is legitimate when it strengthens the house, not when it builds a bypass. The same message came through policing case and the public debt case. Institutional hygiene matters because it keeps power tethered to law. Third habit, centralizing impulses that smother devolution and fair markets. Devolution is a constitutional settlement, not a mood. When the Interior Ministry tried to impose a unilateral liquor licensing directive, the High Court quashed it as unconstitutional and as a breach of county powers. Even well-meant crackdowns must follow the fourth schedule. Without lawfulness is not order. The market for information is part of our democracy. When a directive funneled government advertising to ABC alone, it threatened media pluralism and flouted procurement rules. In Law Society of Kenya against PS Kisiangani, the High Court invalidated the directive for lack of legal basis and for breaching procurement norms. You cannot starve independent media of revenue through an unlawful policy. Procurement law protects fairness in the marketplace of goods and in the marketplace of ideas. Public concessions and licenses sit in the same family of obligations. Interim orders halted the proposed that year JKA lease to Adani in Law Society and Kenya Human Rights Commission against the Kenya Airports Authority. The runway to legitimacy still passes through competitive tender and real participation. The Supreme Court wrote the lesson in larger print in Okia Umtata Okoiti against the portside freight terminals. It cancelled KPA license and way leave for grain terminal because the process failed the constitutional threshold of transparency, accountability, fairness, and competitiveness under Article 227. In public resources, if public resources are at stake, then public rules apply, always. The fourth and final habit that I want to talk about is disrespect for judicial independence. A republic breathes through compliance and court orders. Disagreements with a judgment should travel through appeals, reviews, and good faith compliance. It should not morph into threats, budgetary strangulation, or personalized attacks on judges. The jurisprudence I've outlined above shows a judiciary that has insisted on participation, institutional fidelity, devolved authority, and clean procurement. That insistence is not obstruction. It is how rights survive. If we weaken courts, we teach officials that constitution words carry no consequence. Then the plate slides under the door again. These cases do not exhaust the problem, but they map it clearly. Shortcuts cut out the citizen, parallel structures sideline institutions that the Constitution intended to stand between the public and the power, centralizing impulses pull decisions back to Nairobi and punish dissent in the marketplace of ideas. Contempt for the bench undercut the one forum where the weak can lawfully prevail against the wrong. The repair begins with habits, not speeches. And on part 3, as I promised, I talk about elections, IBC, and the old temptation to fix politics by changing the rules. There is renewed talk of re-engineering our constitutional order under friendly names. The newest label is consensus democracy. It sounds warm. In our context, it often means boardroom deals that soften the edge of electoral competition and makes opposition less meaningful. This is not unity. It is insulation from the voters. The cure for political loss is better politics, not constitutional surgery. Elections are the hinge on which citizens' sovereignty swings. If you want consensus, build it in open, with the public in the room through the law for institutions the Constitution already provides. Chapter 6 talks about integrity. Articles 1 and 10 set out sovereignty and national values. Article 255, the path for amendment. Use that path. Do not smuggle pacts that make voting ornamental and blur the line between government and opposition. Independent commissions make elections meaningful. The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission carries burdens that start long before polling day. Boundaries, voter registration, campaign and enforcement, technology choices, vendor selection. Each step can grow or kill trust. The jurisprudence on institutions and procurement gives us warnings and a map. Okia Omtata and the Portside Freight case tells us procurement is constitutional, not clerical. Law Society against Kisiangani tells us you cannot weaponize state advertising to punish media that scrutinize elections. If IBC procurement and the wider information space obey Article 227, public confidence follows. If government communications treat all legitimate media as part of the public square, citizens can hear competing claims and make up their own minds. Elections breathe that air. Parliament must do its part. Appointments to IBC should be done on time under a framework that the public can see and trust. Funding should be predictable and protected. Procurement should be transparent. Litigation should be welcomed as a way to clarify rules in advance, not denounced as disloyalty. Political parties should train agents properly, publish their own tallies honestly, and accept defeat when they lose. That culture is as important as any legal cause. And in part 4, I talk to you directly. Gen Z and the street classroom in constitutional method. Let me speak about the young Kenyans who have recently taken civic action off the stage and onto the street. Gen Z did two important things at once. They reminded the country that public participation is not a box to tick. They forced the executive to listen. The courts have been saying the same for years. In ODM against the Speaker, in Enokaora and KHLC, the state was told to bring citizens to the table before redrawing health and education. Magare scrapped a digital fee scheme imposed without lawful basis. Courts and citizens met in the middle. That is healthy constitutionalism. To the young in this hall who constitute the majority, and many of whom were children in 2010, keep going, submit views on bills, read them first, ask a member of county assembly what they did with your submission. File an access to information request. Join a public interest case if a right that you use daily is being reshaped without you. Vote, organize, hold peaceful assemblies. The right to be heard exists so that you can use it. It gets stronger the more you use it. And part 5, as I head to the end, the devolution as a quiet revolution and how to strengthen it. Devolution is a promise that the people should live nearer to power. It is also a design to spread development fairly and to make governors answer to neighbors. The temptation to re-centralize always returns, often dressed as order or efficiency. Courts have pushed back when that temptation turns into unlawful practice. The case on Njoroge that I mentioned is a clean example. A national liquor directive fell because licensing sits with counties. Even a crackdown must follow the 4th schedule. If you want safety and health, use the right door. The harder work now is finance. Counties cannot govern on promises. Delayed exchequer releases bleed hospitals, bursaries, and water projects. Timely transfers are not a favor from the National Treasury. They are part of the architecture that people chose. Here's a practical list of what would strengthen devolution without a single amendment. Publish and keep monthly disbursement schedule and keep it. Ring-fence equitable share with an automatic transfer rule that triggers payments unless Parliament lawfully delays for specified reasons. Use conditional grants sparingly and only with county consent and clear, measurable outcomes. Require a public notice when the National Treasury is in arrears beyond a set threshold, and allow counties to seek mandatory orders after a short grace period. Build a public dashboard that shows county by county the status of transfers and absorption. Encourage counties to adopt fiscal responsibility charters that set limits on pending bills and require quarterly reports in open sittings of county assemblies. Make intergovernmental dispute resolution faster and more transparent. Let the public see where every shilling goes. Devolution lives when money moves on time, when citizens can follow the money. In part 6, what is to be done? Now to the practical center of my argument. What must we do now if we intend to honor the spirit and not only the letter of our Constitution? Guard the independence of the judiciary without apology. Courts are not a special interest. They are the country's emergency brake. In ODM and the speaker, we are taught that power cannot spend people's money without the people in the room. Aura and KHRC reminded us the state that social policy must be built with citizens, not on top of them. Magari and Law Society, Attorney General warned the executive against replacing independent bodies with hand-picked task forces. The Public Debt Task Force suspension defended the Auditors General's lay. Obey court orders, fund the judiciary and the Judicial Service Commission on time. Stop personalizing disagreement with judges. Litigate your case, then live with the result. The Republic breathes easier when that discipline holds. Keep elections real. Resist attempts to edit the Constitution to make voting ornamental. Consensus democracy is a pleasant phrase that, in our context, often means boardroom deals that dilute the vote and deflate the opposition. Our law already supplies the guardrails. Sovereignty sits with the people. Participation and accountability sit in Article 10. Any proposal that blurs the line between government and opposition weakens the people's leverage. The cure for political loss is better politics, not constitutional surgery. Back independent commissions, especially IBC, with law and resources. IBC's strength lies in its work long before polling day. Boundaries, voter registers, campaign finance, technology, and procurement. If these obey the Constitution, trust grows. The cases on procurement are a lighthouse. Both sides says procurement of public resources is constitutional, not clerical. Kisiangani says you cannot re-engineer the media market by unlawful directives that ration state adverts. Parliament should appoint commissioners on time and fund the commission predictably. The commission should publish procurement decisions and contracts in real time with clear reasons. Parties should accept arbitration of disputes without trying to burn down the house that settled them. Thank you, Evans. So you're my such good editor-in-chief. Honor the citizen's voice and recognize Gen Z's civic work. The youth-led protests changed the national conversation. They forced the executive to concede that participation is not a tick box. Courts and citizens pulled in the same direction. Keep showing up, keep submitting views, keep asking what changed after you participated. Participation becomes culture when citizens insist on it. Strengthen devolution, do not starve it. The law has already drawn the lines between national and county functions. Respect them. Where the lines are blurry, negotiate in public. Stop trying to run countries by circulars from Nairobi. Pay what is due when it is due. If you want county leaders to be accountable, give them the funds and clarity to be accountable for. Keep procurement clean across sectors. JKIA and Portside are reminders that public cannot be edged out when public resources are at stake. Concessions, licenses, and long-term contracts must meet the constitutional test of fairness, equity, transparency, and competitiveness. Publish tender documents and evaluation reports as a matter of course. Subject major concessions to legislative oversight for a defined period. Use independent monitors for high-value projects. In disputes, bring the public to court early, not after the damage is done. Protect plural press. democracy needs a noisy, independent press to keep us all honest. Kisiangani confirms that government cannot use procurement to punish criticism by rationing adverts to favored outlets. Ministries and state corporations should advertise lawfully, competitively, and transparently. Journalists should keep chasing tenders because that is where values meet money. Talk about money in plain language. State finances are tight. Social demands are real. The honest path is to explain what can be done and when, and to keep priorities steady. Citizens forgive a hard truth faster than a soft lie. Legitimacy loves candor. Call out the fancy labels. Consensus in democracy sounds kind. In practice, it often means that elections do not matter and opposition is temporary. Courts have already warned us how shortcuts corrode trust. JKIA was paused because a public asset cannot be traded by stealth. Portside cancelled concession because the public rules were ignored. You cannot claim to respect the people while removing the moments when they hold you to account. If you want consensus, build it in the open through lawful institutions, not by erasing the referee and the scholar. Seventh, a short walk through history so we remember why this matters. Those who came before us did not suffer for wordplay. They fought for freedoms that have to be used to stay alive. Freedoms speak to that, freedom to speak so that facts are not buried. Freedom of association so that citizens can stand together when alone they are easily broken. Freedom of the press so that the powerful do not choose which stories are told. Due process so that detention cannot be a tool of convenience. When a court today demands meaningful participation or stops a task force that invades an independent mandate, it is not being fussy. It is paying the debt we owe to those who pushed the door open in 2010. Our constitution is young, but it is not fragile. It has faced attempts to amend it to suit the misfortunes of those who hold office. It has seen experiments in power sharing that promise peace while postponing justice. We should be honest about our history. Some bargains prevented collapse. Others became habits that corrode responsibility. The difference is easy to see. If a deal strengthens institutions, includes the public, and is tested in lawful forums, it may be a bridge. If it weakens institutions, sidelines the public, and is announced as a fait accompli, it is a cul-de-sac. And so I close with where I began, with a breath. A good constitution gives a country room to breathe. The text gives us structure. The spirit gives us life. Keep the spirit and the letter will take care of itself. So let us keep faith with the promise of 2010. Guard the courts, keep elections real, fund and respect independent commissions, especially IBC. Listen to the young who have been teaching us a masterclass in participation. Pay counties on time and treat them as partners. Call them what they are. Evasion rests in wisdom. Professor Yash Paul Guy put it best. A constitution is about how we live together. May we choose to live together under rules we wrote, values we chose, and institutions we respect. May we be the generation that keeps the door open for those who come after us. God bless you and thank you. Whether to sit down or take the questions. Yes, I would like to take a little break, and then the questions I will record them and they'll come and answer them. If that's,
Okay, let's have another round of applause for Senior Counsel, Mr. Gitobu Imanyara. Okay, I want to also give a special mention to LSK Nakuru chapter. I hear that there are some members, council members present. If you can wave, we can acknowledge you. Thank you so much for being present. Excellent. So it's question time, and please feel free to ask questions. Just some ground rules. Let your question be a single question, one question, so pick your best if you have 2 or 3. Secondly, let your question not be longer than 30 seconds so that we can save Senior Counsel some time to record the questions. Okay? Okay, let's start with Young Green.
Okay, good morning. Thank you, Honorable Imanyara, for the fine presentation. My question is, how do we hold statutory institutions and specifically the IPOA accountable when they fail to perform their constitutional mandates? And this is because we have seen them infringe our rights as law students. Some of us died, but we are still asking ourselves, is it possible to petition for their disbandment? Thank you.
Okay. That was Young Green Mudeni, winner of the CB Madden Award. 2022? 24. Okay, excellent. Shimron.
So, good morning, and thank you for the fine enlightenment. And my question is with regards to a phrase that you have used throughout the sharing, citizens being in the room. So, with regards to that, I would like elaboration on being that online platforms have been quite a milestone with regards to Gen Zs and the revolution. So how do we incorporate the online platforms that the Gen Z express themselves with regards to citizens being in the room, and what reforms can we draw? Yeah, that's my question. Thank you.
That is Shimron Oloch asking about online civic participation and how it can be mainstreamed.
Good morning. Thank you, Judge Skem. I would like to ask Mr. Gitobu, does it pose a danger to participatory processes like elections when citizens have to force compliance with constitutional principles, like force the state and the leadership to comply with the constitutional principles through advocacy and court action? I talk about principles like public participation that in the Constitution, the leadership is expected to adhere to them, but we still have to go to protests and advocacy through courts for them to comply. Does it pose a danger to the participatory processes like elections? Thank you.
So that is George Skem asking whether citizen enforcement through picketing and protests poses a danger to constitutional implementation.
Good morning, I'm Mobat Eugene. My question is to Honorable Imanyara. You've taught us that right must be lived and not just written yet. Yet in the recent Gen Z Maandamano, the government responded to public participation with repression and even shut down the live stream of the media houses. Do you think this reflects the failure of the constitution, especially Article 33, 34, and 37? Or is it just a deeper crisis of the political will to honor the Bill of Rights? Thank you.
That is Eugene
Obat.
Yeah. Asking about the sufficiency of Articles 36, 37, 33, 34, and 37, or whether it is a lack of political will that leads to the need for protests. Okay. I think we need to have some gender balance and some community balance. So we will now have at least one question from a community member, and I would like to see a lady's hand first and foremost. Yeah. They are all men. No lady would want to ask a question. We have a 2/3 gender rule, and we have already defied it entirely. Okay, as a result, I will give a chance to Nabintu. No, Nchiko. It's Nabintu. Is that Nabintu? Yes, who had raised her hand just to satisfy the gender rule, and then we shall take 2 questions from community members.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Gitobu Imanyara. So my question is, in this century, the one we are living in, law has been used to normalize exploitation, expropriation, and all those kind of harm to people. So my question is, how can we break this cycle and reimagining the law not as a neutral arbiter of exploitation, but as a site of radical decolonial innovation?
Okay, so this is the constitutional, that is Nabintu Nchiko, asking about constitutional remedies to use of law for legal as a tool for expropriation and exploitation. Okay, so community members, please mention your name.
Patrick Barasa, community member. Mheshimiwa, koti ilitoa uamuzi juu ya hazina ya CDF ya kwamba isisimamiwe na waheshimiwa wetu wa bunge. Lakini tunaona waheshimiwa wetu wanaendelea na sheria kwamba wanataka CDF iendelee. Kwa kutathmini kwako, is CDF constitutional or unconstitutional? Asante.
You said your name is? Patrick. Patrick Baraza. Okay, and one more, just one more. So please pick between the 2.
Thank you. My name is Calvin Muga. I work with an organization called Midrift Human Rights Network. We are based in Nakuru. Allow me to ask this. Just recently, we saw the Intergovernmental Relations and Technical Committee release a report which showed that over 500 functions still remains at the national level. Now that means, therefore, that the money commensurate with that still remains at the national level. What is it that we can do at this particular level to ensure that then the functions that still remains at the national level come to the county? Because devolution is actually the heart of the county. We cannot talk about devolution and miss on the functions and the resources that then are supposed to be devolved to the counties. The last one then would be this. The right to life is...
Please allow me to limit you to one question, sir.
Just one.
Yes.
I really appreciate. Thank you.
Remind me your name again?
My name is Calvin from Midrift Harinet. Midrift Human Rights Network, yes.
Midrift Human Rights Network.
It's an organization, it's an NGO in
He's
Nairobi.
asking about what remedies we can give to the unconstitutional lack of transfer of county government functions that are still being held on by the national government. I think we'll take those. As you know, we started about an hour late, so we really apologize if we can't take any more questions. I think we will allow you to just answer the questions from where you are. Or you'll come. Okay, let me come for you.
As I said, we are very well represented here as a platform, so I'm going to answer these questions together with my editor-in-chief. Evans, please come forward. I know you're in the program, but you will also participate in this, because just like the Dean did when Dr. Kagame arrived, we are following precedent. Right. I've recorded about 9 questions, starting with IPOA. And it's not just our IPOA, really, we're talking about all the independent commissions in the constitutions. Are they functional? And if not functional, what can we, as citizens, do about it? It's not an easy question, because we have a serious problem in this country. Despite the fact that we passed this constitution at a referendum with over 2/3 Kenyans supporting it, and followed it up with an enactment of the laws that placed it in our law books, we have a political class that has never believed in the new constitution. And a political class that up to today seeks to return Kenya to the pre-2010 days, and specifically to the one-party rule days. I do not wish to go political today, but we need to acknowledge that the implementation of the Constitution has not been easy. The Constitution itself saw this. It created the Constitutional Implementation Committee, if you remember, led by Charles Nyachai. For 5 years, they tried to give life to the letter of the spirit of the Constitution. They didn't succeed. We gave them an extra year. They didn't succeed. So we have independent commissions that are weakened by the procedure in which membership is appointed. Specifically, now for IPOA, if I go there, we have commissioners who have served in institutions that have been blamed for the atrocities that happened before the 2010 Constitution. Police officers who are guilty of the excesses of the previous Constitution have been sneaked into IPOA. Now, you will not and cannot expect IPOA to function as intended when its membership has not internalized the Constitution that they are implementing. But it's not lost. We are not without remedies. And as I explained in my speech, I took quite a bit of time to go through case law. The answer lies in more and more citizen actions by direct court action challenging the decisions, or by protests in the streets, as we saw during the Gen Zs. Gen Z's demonstrations against the finance laws. Dr. Kagame mentioned that we are currently in court to enforce the principle of command responsibility with regard to the commission of crimes against humanity. That is in the case that is now in court and is coming up for hearing sometimes in October, and in which I am acting for Dr. Kagame. We have laws in place, but we have not enforced those laws. So what we have done through Dr. Kagame is utilize the provisions of the International Crimes Act, which became part of the Kenya law way back in 2007, and which has clear provisions of holding to account those who bear the greatest responsibility for crimes against humanity. So we have gone to court because the persons who have this responsibility have claimed that they do. They enjoy immunity because the DPP can never prosecute them. So we are reminding them there exists a constitutional safeguard in our laws in the form of private prosecutions. And under the International Crimes Act, the enforcement of these prosecutions is not even by the magistrate's court. It's by the High Court. So we're in court seeking permission to institute a private prosecution against those who bore the greatest responsibility. That's the command responsibility of the Rome Statute. And I will suggest that even with IPOA, we follow the same route. As to whether we will succeed immediately, it's not clear, but in the end, the Constitution will prevail if we, the people, live by it, and if we assert the constitutional rights that the Constitution enshrines. A lot of times we tend to take it that constitutional rights are privileges that we enjoy at the behest of the state. They are not. These are fundamental. They inhere to us as human beings, and they are enforceable. And if they are not being enforced, the international community saw it fit to enact in the Rome Statute that holds to account those who escape the local mechanisms in our laws. So that's a route I would suggest we adopt with regard to IPOA. Go to court, prepare petitions, camp outside there, and I have no doubt that we will succeed. The second question, I think, related to citizens in the room. And when I referred to the room in my presentation, what I had in mind is public participation. That we must be in the room that creates this law. Public participation is central in our Constitution 2010. And as we celebrate the 15th year of that Constitution, let us remember that power belongs in the room. And that room is where you and I are. And in that room, we outnumber those who govern us and those who are obliged to apply the Constitution on our behalf. So being in the room is giving the Constitution practical expression by active promotion of its values. Participatory processes, respect for enforcement, and dangers by endangered in public. We are talking about the threats to public participation. So all these questions relate, as I understand them, they all relate to whether we are living the vision of our 2010 Constitution. It's a big challenge because we are not there yet. We have not taken our Constitution as a way of life. We are not breathing it. And until such time that we make everyday living in Kenya an act of implementing the Constitution, we will continue to face that challenge. And I think even the fourth question related to that, rights which we believe in must be enforced. They are not privileges that we enjoy at the pleasure of those who govern us. Normalization of unlawful behavior. Once again, you can see all these questions are relating to the central theme of not living by the spirit of the Constitution or even by the letter of the Constitution. And our challenge is how to enforce these basic rules that the Constitution gives us as fundamental and as inherent to every single citizen. I think the question that really is slightly different is one of the CDF. Again, the central principle of the Constitution is separation of powers. Before 2010 Constitution, we suffered the imperial presidency. Our challenge was how to disperse power without weakening the state, how to make democracy more participatory, and therefore, because the lesson from the imperial presidency was that money remained in Nairobi. That's why far-off provinces or counties or constituencies, like in the north, could go on for ages without any tangible development, and created the mechanisms under which they would all benefit. So CDF in principle is not wrong. What is wrong is the enforcement of the CDF law by members of parliament, because it's a clear breach of the separation of powers principle. This has been restated in more than 3 times by the High Court and the Supreme Court. But our political class, our parliamentary class, because they are beneficiaries of the corruption that is in CDF, have insisted that they administer this. I have personally no doubt that even when they pass this new law, the court will strike it down, because separation of powers is so central to our governance structure. CDF in principle, nothing wrong with it, but we cannot leave it to an institution that is responsible for oversight. Now, over 500 functions that remain in Nairobi, and what do we do about them, and how do we ensure or force the government to disperse them? A real challenge here, because the Intergovernmental Committee itself has raised questions regarding how counties are enforcing the law that has been bequeathed to them. But it is not a matter of choice. The Constitution in the functions of the national government and the functions of the counties are set out in the Constitution. Let us live by the Constitution, and when those powers go to their rightful offices in the constituencies, then we can address the challenges that they face there. But suppose there is delay, what can we do? Again, I say our roots is the courts. Rule of law, it is central that we resolve our disputes through mechanisms under the law. The courts, arbitration, we are not doing that enough. there aren't as many citizens or counties demanding that the functions which are theirs be dispersed to them. So they need to go to court, they need to engage the national government, and they need to engage their members of parliament and MCAs to see that this is reversed. And if it's not, we can use the mechanisms that the law recognizes. Not just going to court, but arbitration, dispute resolution mechanisms are there in our books. So let us use them. Evans, can you come along and deal with the last question of right to life, and then add on to the areas that have not covered.
Good morning once again. We're in Kabarak, and this is associated with Mzee Moi. For the only reason that we remember Mzee Moi and Kabarak, we're going to do the Moi clap. Most of you don't know what the Moi clap. We used to clap. Wazee, habari zenyu, mko salama? Mnakumbuka Moi akisema tupige makofi, tulikuwa tunapiga makofi namna gani? Tuifanye mtendo wa Moi. 1, 2, 3. Asante sana. Mzee wangu Imanyara amemaliza kazi, lakini ningependa kuongezea tu kidogo. Kuna maswali yaliyoulizwa kwenye online. So nitajibu hayo mawili na niongezee 1 ama 2 kwenye maswali yaliyoulizwa. Na Bintu, there's a reason why the Constitution has values. We have values under Article 10 to 32. Values are straddling all over the Constitution. So if you read those values and your section 7 of the 6th schedule, it means that Parliament does not have a carte blanche. It doesn't have the authority that the common law Parliament in England has to make law as it deems fit. In this country, you have to write the law respecting the Constitution, its principle, and what it promises. Are we together, Nabintu? So that is one way of dealing with exploitation and the questions of, is it expropriation and all that, all those worries that we have. We'll see you later on jurisprudence. It's a heavy discussion further. There's also the question of democracy being endangered by citizen action. The brother who asked that question, the locus of authority, of power, not authority, but power, because power reposits in the people. Every other person, including the president, enjoys delegated power, which means authority. That means that every person has to be asked questions by the people. And I'm going to make a controversial statement here. I'm glad it's in Kabarak, that's why I make it. We have 5 columns, apart from the traditional 3 arms of government. We used to have the executive, the judiciary, Mwalimu Ambani, parliament, sindio? That was called the Trias Politica model. Not anymore. We have now the 4th column, the Chapter 15 commissions, sindio? And I make another one that is quite controversial. Public participation as a side for the people in terms of their authority and power. And that is why I always say that we are not getting it right in terms of what public participation means in the Constitution. For me, public participation is the 5th column. Are we together? We used to talk of the press as the 4th estate, the 4th branch. Yeah? Now that has been subsumed by chapter 15s, and then we have public participation as a side for the authority of the people. I think that is covered. I'm going to send an article by Professor Kech Migai. I'll avail it to the school on how to deal with statutory institutions, how to keep them in check, There's a paper he delivered last week in Nyali, and adding on to what Senior said, structural interdicts and how to hold these fellows into account. I'll share it with the school, you'll read it some more. Now, there are 2 questions online by an anonymous attendee. The US Senate opened an inquiry into the conduct of the Kenyan administration on suspicion of utilization of its intelligence to conduct abductions. There are reports that Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania are working together to capture citizens who dissent against government. Are there constitutional mechanisms that citizens can use to demand accountability from the government regarding the treatment of citizens and neighbors where government cites national security and other such reasons for their actions? Let's be correct here. What the Senate in the US is doing is a call for review of the non-NATO ally status. Remember, during the President Biden administration, Kenya had been, quote unquote, favored and accorded what they call a non-NATO allied status. So that came with it some privileges in terms of trade agreements, military agreements, such like things. Now, our president went to China and made a statement that made some senators in the US uncomfortable when he spoke of a new world order. Now, that having upset some people in Washington, a senator has now gone to Congress and has petitioned the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Treasury, the Director of Intelligence to review that status. If that review goes the way the senator wants, Kenya will be stripped of that status, and that will mean we will not be granted intelligence in the way it's granted to us as a non-NATO allied status, will not be given preferential treatment in terms of certain trade agreements, military agreements, and such kind of agreements that go with that status. In terms of Kenya, what do we do to hold the government to account? First and foremost, people like me understand the language of going to court. We have gone to court to ask questions of the government in terms of what it does. I was in court for the Besigye matter. I'm going to be in court over the Boniface Mwangi Agatha matter. I was in court again for the abductions, the numerous abductions by the Gen Zs, and so many of my colleagues are in court over related matters. Mheshimiwa Imanyara, who should be giving us guidance and not going to court, he's still coming to help us in court. Mheshimiwa Karua as well, on a number of abduction-related matters that the state has been conducting. That is one way. Then we have UN mechanisms, of course, the African human rights mechanisms. You can make your reports right to the rapporteurs. There are several ways of dealing with this issue. So the first and foremost, you go to court, ask your questions. Because of time, let me go to the second question. Having enjoyed devolution for 15 years, does the 2010 Constitution provide adequate checks for transparency in counties, seeing how corruption has been obvious? And if not, what do you think should change? We have written anything that we could write about the law. Kenya's problem, as Senior said, is the culture of bad manners, undermining the laws that are there. So if you look at transparency, you start with the Constitution. The Constitution makes transparency and accountability a value under Article 10. What clearer statement could there be apart from that? What we did was to cascade the corruption at national level and took it to county level, whereby your governors, now being called Your Excellency, think that they are small presidents around here, yeah, organizing abductions and torture and all manner of things that some of them have been doing around here. Vigilance. Let us keep asking our questions, going to court, using administrative agencies, including the Office of the Ombudsperson, the Ombudsman's Office, CAJ, write to him when our community
kama kuna maswali ambayo gavana wenyu na county haipatiani maswali, aandikia ofisi ya ombudsman. Ombudsman wa saa hii amechangamka kidogo, anawapatia information very quickly, na asipowapatia any information, mtaongea na mheshimiwa Ambani hapa, Professor Ambani, tunajua vile tuna gonga milango ya ombudsman, na you'll get your answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I don't think there is any question that we've left. In any case, you really cannot answer all questions. We can only open up discussions for further scrutiny and, if necessary, for further reading. A copy of my presentation is available to the Dean on soft. I'm sure he will share with all of you. And my contacts are also there. If any one of you would like to follow up, you can do so. If you wish to do by way of WhatsApp, take the number 0727 800 847. Thank you very much for giving us your hearing. It's my time to take to the floor. I will not be able to join you for the rest of your stay here, but I'll follow up online as much as I can. Thank you very much, and it was really beautiful being here and addressing such young people. The future, our generation lies with you, and we can only support you. We continue to lend you support. And before I sit down, I want to thank Kabarak students, the Kabarak Law School, for doing very well in our platform. Your submissions are outshining all the others. And I believe you have won more CB Madden awards than any other university, and I suspect this year there will be more of you also winning, because the CB Madden awards also have traditionally been followed by offer of scholarships, and many of you who have won that award have been beneficiaries of further studies outside Kenya, in South Africa, and in the US. I want to make a plea to Stephanie. Maybe she can create something for the CB Madden Awards, people to go to Germany and visit the Cardinal Foundation, because as she told us, their constitution was also born out of the horrors of the Second World War. There are a lot of lessons to learn from them. I spent 3 weeks there learning their decentralized government system before we had started our debate on devolution, and it is a system that works extremely well, and it's something that we can learn a lot from. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mheshimiwa. I call him senior counsel because he should already be on the list, Gitobu Imanyara, for that really inspiring session. I believe that we have all been reinvigorated in our belief for the promise of our Constitution. Excellent. So we are running a little late, and this will inconvenience especially our online audience. So we want to make some small adjustments to the program. We will have tea break up until 12:10. So tea will be served. You'll be escorted to where tea will be served. After, at 12:10, we will break into 2 rooms. And both of these rooms will be covering the theoretical framework for constitutional understanding of the Bill of Rights. It's split into two, from Articles 18 to 22, and then from Articles 23 to 26, with just the lone exception of Article 26 being the article to life, dealing with article to the right to life, dealing with a particular right, but all the other articles will deal with either the understanding of rights in our Constitution, how they are enforced, what rights can be limited, what rights are not limitable, the power of courts, the responsibilities and the obligations of the state, and the rights of the citizen. So those two breakout sessions will be held in our two auditoriums. The first breakout session that deals with Article 18 to 22 will be here and will be led by Evans Ogada as the discussant. No, by by Mr. Nkaricha as the lead discussant. To be on the other side. Okay, so that will be on the other side at the Katiba auditorium. And then breakout session number 2 will be led by the lead discussant, Evans Ogada, here from 12:10. For our online audience, links have been sent for the second breakout room, the first breakout, no, for the first breakout room that shall be held at the Katiba auditorium. So that's a separate link dealing with Articles 18 to 22. And then the link for the morning session will continue to be used for the second breakout session. Okay, see you all in about 15 minutes and have a good tea.